things that are facing us in this economy. And to help me with that, we're going to have some help from Jim Carrillo and Nancy Lowe. Would you come on up and give us a hand here? Come on.
All right, well, thank you very much for coming today. And when Nancy and I were first brought the idea of an independent business alliance, at first we thought, what do we have to do with an independent business alliance? Well, what do you have to do with an independent business alliance?
Well, I do own an independent local business, so when I hear people talking about independent local business, my ears kind of perk up. But more than that, I've lived in this community for 22 years now. To some of you, that's a very short time, but I feel very committed to the community, and I want to do what's good for the community. And when I started hearing about shopping locally, I thought, wow, that is something I need to know more about, and that I want to help other people know more about. How about you, Jim?
Well, I belong to a group called the Morgan Hill Toastmasters, and most of the folks you're going to see up here today belong to that group. The reason why I'm here is a local independent business owner supports our organization, and it's through their generosity that we're able to meet on a weekly basis. So I can say independent businesses are near and dear to my heart as well. As you were doing your research on independent businesses, what's one of the things that struck out at you as, wow, wouldn't have been expected?
One of the big things that really surprised me was how much difference it can make to the local economy for people to just shift a part of their spending to the local businesses. It can make a huge difference in terms of jobs and revenue and income to the community and the financial health of the community in general.
You know, one of the things that I thought was interesting was that in a buy local campaign, sometimes you think it is all about the independent business and that there is no room for any of the large corporations to be involved. And that was absolutely just the opposite case. In a buy local campaign, everybody can be involved, whether you're a consumer, a business owner, or even the big box stores can help out the local communities. Hopefully through today's presentations, you'll hear some of the ways that we can all help out, and then afterwards you'll be able to share some ideas on what we think we can do with this independent business alliance.
Let me ask you, it's not all doom and gloom, right? We lost Courtesy Chevrolet on Friday, but we're getting Walmart here pretty quick. Isn't that going to help us out? How would you think about that?
Well, it's not all doom and gloom. However, I would like to present what some of the concerns are with the proliferation of what we call big box stores or large national chains. I'm going to start by giving you a scenario. A city wants to increase its tax revenue by increasing retail business through a plan that includes enticing some large stores to come into business here. This, in turn, is going to attract shoppers from neighboring towns, and it will encourage more businesses to set up shop here. The city decides to start by courting a large national chain called, in this scenario, T-Mart. The city offers T-Mart tax incentives, free land, and roads and infrastructure that will be paid for by the local community if they will just open their store here. T-Mart responds positively to the invitation and starts making plans to open up a superstore on a large piece of land just outside of the main part of the town. The citizens of the city are thrilled because now they can get those low prices and they can get them close to home. And T-Mart is going to bring a large number of jobs because it's a huge store, so a lot of people are going to be needed to work there. Because T-Mart is coming, other chain stores are going to want to open their doors nearby. Soon, it's anticipated that the city will have Target, Barnes & Noble, Applebee's, Cheesecake Factory, Staples, Home Depot, and more. The land is graded and prepared for T-Mart. Roads are built so that people can get to it from within and outside of the city. New street lights, traffic signals are put in. Plans are made for a new freeway off-ramp with a huge sign visible to passing cars. And finally, T-Mart arrives. T-Mart's prices are great. Because it's part of a national chain, it can afford to cut prices and sell some items below what other merchants would pay cost for. Every week, their ad lists unbelievably low prices on pages of products. And it's a superstore, so not only does it sell clothing and shoes, housewares and toys, but it also has low prices on office supplies, books, music, hardware, pharmaceuticals, tires, car servicing, and even groceries. People didn't think things could get much better than this, but they are. T-Mart also has a McDonald's, a Starbucks, and a Bank of America right inside the store. People are thrilled that they can take care of their shopping, banking, fast food, and caffeine fix all in one stop. And at the same time, they can get great deals on items that they used to have to pay more for. So they flock in droves to T-Mart. But what the people of the city don't realize is that they are paying lower prices for many products, but there are hidden costs, both economic and cultural. Many of these low prices are the result of T-Mart using manufacturers outside of the United States. Higher demand for cheap products means reduction in numbers of American-made products and potential reduction in American jobs and economy. The majority of T-Mart's employees are paid minimum wage. Most of them are only offered part-time jobs because this keeps T-Mart from having to provide health benefits. The savings on payroll and benefits are one reason for T-Mart's ability to offer low prices. Those jobs that everyone was so happy about do not really provide as much as they'd hoped. The workers are making less than a living wage, and they're without health insurance. In addition, T-Mart doesn't have to pay property tax because it doesn't own the land. This reduces the tax revenues that could potentially have come to the city. Because everybody is going to T-Mart, and later to the other chains that pop up around it, local businesses start losing customers. Within 3 years, the local print shop, a grocery store, 2 clothing stores, a restaurant, and a stationery store closed their doors, leaving vacant spaces downtown. These stores were already facing challenges from the recession, and the additional displacement of business to T-Mart has sent them over the edge. The city has now lost 6 employers who had been good sources of income to the community through wages, goods and services purchased locally, tax revenues, and charitable donations. T-Mart's home base is Texas. It uses the home company's contractors, architects, advertisers, printers, accountants, and other suppliers instead of buying goods and services from local businesses. So most of the money that flows into the store leaves the region instead of strengthening the local economy. If it were a locally owned store, studies show that 3 times as much would have stayed in the area. After 6 years, there are very few businesses left in the downtown area. The region around T-Mart has grown and developed, and when you drive past, you wouldn't know if you were in California, Iowa, or Kansas. It looks just like every other community dominated by big box stores. People of the city start to wonder why they don't feel much of a sense of community anymore. They wonder what happened to the town they knew and loved. They grow nostalgic for the days when they could walk around downtown, have their favorite sandwich at the local deli, fixed just the way they like it, and then go next door and chat with their neighbor, the independent print shop owner, while picking up their print order. They long for the days when their city had its own special identity and when they felt a strong sense of belonging and pride. To make things worse, an economic impact study shows that the retail development actually created a drain on municipal budgets. That is, it required more in public services such as road maintenance and police than it generated in tax revenues. So not only did they sacrifice some of what made their community unique, but the economic gains they had hoped for did not materialize. This is a bad case scenario, but I'm going to let Phil come and tell us what's coming next.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you. Actually, I'm going to have Jim come up and tell us what we can do as a community.
Actually, everybody everybody up here is representing the community. I also have a small business, and we're going to have another speaker that represents part of our city. So you got it all coming today. Nancy mentioned that we were losing a sense of community. And the fact is, from rural America up into our cities in San Francisco, citizens are crying and lamenting about the fact that we have lost a sense of community. But at the same time, we're seeing national chains come into each of our small towns and displace the local businesses. Well, some say that that's a symptom, that maybe because we're losing a sense of community, we're allowing this to happen. But maybe it might be the other way around. Maybe it might be that because our small businesses and our small independent businesses are being displaced, that's what's causing us to lose a sense of community. Well, let's think about the way we make our decisions when we're making our purchases. Usually you'd think that we were logical about the process, and we have this great way of making our own decisions on how we can best use our money and our time. But maybe they're not our decisions. Maybe it's a result of the bombardment of advertising that we're getting every day on television, radio, or when we're driving down the freeway, saying big box stores are the way to go. Save money. We might be saving a nickel and dime here, but are we saving money in the long run? When local businesses go out, it leaves a void. Now, I haven't been here for as long as most of you, and definitely not as long as Nancy. I've only lived here for 5 years. But I remember our local office supply store downtown. Was it Jody's Junction, right? And I remember turning the corner one day, and I said, hey, call my wife. I'm going to be picking up some things from the store. Turn around, and there's no more Jody's Junction. Like, what the heck just happened there? Only been here for 5 years, and I'm already feeling the effects of the voids that are created when local small businesses go out of business. Now, I have to admit, the big box chains have their lure. They have their lure to us as citizens, paying lower prices, but also as voters and elected public officials, too. I mean, think about all the tax revenue that we're going to get from the big box chains coming in, and the 300 jobs that are going to be added. Well, as Nancy noted, those jobs aren't always the full-time positions that we would have liked to have, maybe part-time positions, or they're lower-skilled jobs. And actually, there was a study done that pointed out that we lose more than one job from local independent business owners for every job that's created for the big box stores. So it's time to consider the real cost that a community loses when locally owned businesses are put out. Locally owned businesses, as Nancy mentioned, impact the community in a much broader sense. So it's the locally owned businesses that are hiring our architects, that are hiring our tax accountants and other bookkeeping personnel. It's the locally owned businesses that are actually using the folks that are doing the interior design for their offices. Do you think Walmart, or should I say T-Mart, is using interior designers from Morgan Hill? I doubt it. Now, they just got a cookie-cutter approach that they're bringing to this table, and they use that. There was a study done with the Independent Business Association in Austin, Texas in 2003, and it concluded that for every $100 spent in a chain, $13 remained in the community. Sounds pretty good, right? But in Austin, Texas, $45 remain in the community for every $100 spent in a local independent business. They do have an impact. And that's what we're here to talk about today is Local Independent Business Alliance. Now, the Independent Business Alliance for the South County was started how long ago?
Today.
Exactly. And do you know who are the members of the Independent Business Alliance? Can everybody please raise your hand? Exactly. We are. There's no formal structure that says that there's this person in charge or that person in charge. It's actually a grassroots effort that we're trying to create through people like us that are interested in improving our community. If I haven't given you enough reasons, or if Nancy hasn't given you enough reasons why buying local changes our environment, I've got 10 specific ones right here. We keep our community unique. Now, locally owned businesses cater to the culture base of the neighborhood that it serves, so residents can find new adventure in a familiar environment. We get better service. Now, when I first moved to Morgan Hill and my daughters were starting school, I was told about this mystic lady that you can go to the local bookstore and you can tell her what your daughter's name is, what grade she's in, what she likes, what she watches on TV, and out of the blue, she'll tell you exactly which book to buy her. not just which book, but what series of books to buy her. That lady is renowned across the community. And if you don't know her, head on over to Booksmart and you can find that same level of service. We can reduce our environmental impact when shopping local. Now, just on the surface, and I know Rebecca's going to cover this even more, but on the surface, we know that local independent businesses also shop local. So now we've reduced our transportation costs to get to the store, and we've reduced additional transportation costs because the money stays within the community. So we're looking at improving the environment. We're creating more good jobs by shopping local, and we're encouraging local prosperity. Research indicates that entrepreneurs and experienced workers are more likely to invest in communities that support locally owned businesses. We can put our taxes to good use, and we can buy what we want, not what someone else wants. I mean, let's think about the buying power of a local business versus a big box store. Now, I imagine when Booksmart or any other local business is deciding what they want to buy, they're thinking about the community. What are people in my community going to buy? And what can I do to serve them? When Walmart decides, they probably got 3 or 4 people sitting behind a desk in Shenzhen, China, deciding, what can we get cheap today? That's what's going to be out there for next week. And then finally, buying local supports local community groups. As I mentioned, I'm with the Toastmasters, and I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for a local independent business. So through that support, we found that local independent businesses actually support public service organizations and nonprofits at a greater extent than the large big box stores. And it's evident in this community.
All right, Jim, thank you. Back up with Jim and share some success stories and some specific examples of what you've been talking about, guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So what are some of the things that you've read, Nancy?
I'd like to talk about one of the success stories I actually talked about on a video, and then I read about it online because I was so interested. In Austin, Texas, there was a very large bookstore called Waterloo. I'm getting the details mixed up. The bookstore is called Book People, and the very large music store was called Waterloo. Now, Borders Books and Music decided to build right across the street from these two businesses. Now, these were very successful businesses that had a stake in the community. The owners lived in the community and supported the community. And these two stores thought, well, what can we do about this? This is kind of a threat to our well-being and to our community. So they didn't want to just whine and say, no, this isn't fair, we don't want them to come in. So they got some people to do a study, and it's the study that Jim cited that found that for every $100 spent at Borders, it was estimated that $13 would go to the local economic activity. And for every $100 spent at the local stores, I'm going to repeat this because I think it's an amazing number, $45 went back to the local community. There are many statistics done with different kinds of businesses that show similar kinds of disparity between what comes to the community from the larger chains compared to what comes from the independent businesses. Now, I think Jim has another success story to tell us about.
Well, there's actually an association, the Independent Business Association, that was created to promote this cause. And they had a retreat up in Berkeley a few years back. Berkeley had never done any type of buy local campaign or anything like that, but after that retreat, there were enough members of the community that they created a buy local campaign in Berkeley that not just the independent businesses are involved in, but also the Chamber of Commerce and the City Council. So it's a whole community event that's taken on, and they're actually promoting this buy local campaign. What they're seeing is that the independent businesses that couldn't afford advertising money and these advertising campaigns, they couldn't gather enough resources alone, are now able to make a difference and get a message out there by coming together.
I forgot to give you the punchline of my story. The local community in Austin actually stopped the Borders books from coming in so that they could continue to just support their own local businesses. Now, there's just a little short one here I want to tell you about or read to you. There's a Santa Fe Business Alliance that collaborates with the city government and even with New Mexico state government on what they call plugging the leaks, preventing leakage of dollars from their local community and the state that could remain to help the citizens of their state. Now, it's only reasonable that taxpayers should reap the benefit of their own tax dollars. This alliance has been very successful in working and communicating with the local government. And one of the things they also did, in addition to that, was to design and implement a locals care, quote unquote, locals care debit credit card program with a locally owned bank to help keep more of the community's spending within the community.
Thank you very much, Jim. Nancy, I want to ask Rebecca Fotu from the city to come up and give us a different handle here on shopping locally. Rebecca?
Good evening. I'm Rebecca Fotu. I'm the Environmental Programs Coordinator for the City of Morgan Hill. And I've been with the city for about a year and a half. And I have to say, I am really pleased with the turnout. I'm going to have the Toastmasters organize all of my community meetings from now on because we do have a lot of environmental forums where the public can come in and participate and give us feedback. And one of the main things that we've been working on since I began working for the city is climate change. And that's the new sexy topic in our political world, in science, and we've discovered that it's no longer a debatable issue, that it's a real issue that we need to address. Because basically everything we do in our life has some kind of environmental impact. Everything from turning on the water, to flipping on the lights, to the things that we also buy. And so shopping locally is really important. And I'd also like to mention too, tomorrow is Earth Day. And so this couldn't be more timely. Although Morgan Hill celebrates Earth Day on Thursday. So if you don't have any time tomorrow, you can go down to the community center on Thursday and you'll see all the art and science fair projects from kids through K through 12. So that should be really interesting. And also a few other things that happened this week. For example, we've had record temperatures this past week. We've had, I think it was 98 today. Last week was 90 degrees, which is completely unusual for this area during this time in April. And we've actually started spare the air alerts. We usually start those in May, and we've started them a whole month earlier. So we can definitely see a lot of our energy-consuming activities are affecting our environment. And just to kind of give you a background to why we care about climate change is, if you look at natural laws that nothing's created or destroyed, we can't take resources from underneath the ground and burn them on the Earth's surface and expect them to disappear. So they do linger around. And carbon dioxide has been singled out as the greenhouse gas that is the be-all, end-all of what's going on with our climate. And that's because everything we do has to do with carbon dioxide. When we burn fuel, when we turn on the light, some kind of fuel is being burned producing carbon. And carbon molecules actually last in the atmosphere 50 to 500 years. So that means if you drove your car here today, that those carbon emissions that were emitted from your vehicle are going to be around when your grandchildren are born. So that's something to really think about how we're impacting our future generations. So I'd like to kind of show you what we've been doing in the city. We've measured the community's carbon footprint. And we did it in 2005. And what we did was we collected information. I know this pie chart's really small, and I'll explain it. But from 2005, we gathered data of how many vehicle miles are traveled on our roads. We got PG&E data from all households and all businesses. Of course, they didn't tell us which ones are using more energy or not, because that's private. But they did give us a lump sum number, and we looked at our waste emissions. And so in 2005, we emitted 300,000 tons of carbon as a community. And so that's our impact. That's this community's impact in the world, in the global perspective. And so this yellow portion here represents 64% of our emissions come from transportation. And this blue here is electricity, this kind of reddish pink is natural gas, and this small sliver is waste. And that's not to say that waste isn't important, that recycling is not important. It's just that all these other activities that we're doing are so great that it kind of singles out waste and makes it smaller. And when you think about residential households and commercial businesses, they take a pretty even chunk between electricity and commercial. And so what we've been trying to do as a community is basically reduce our emissions. So I'm not sure if you've heard, but Arnold Schwarzenegger in 2006, he signed a bill, and it was a goal to reduce our emissions to 1990 levels. And so that basically means reducing it to when our population was 1990, because emissions kind of grow with population. And so this blue line for Morgan Hill indicates what our emissions will be if we don't do anything. If this community doesn't take any action, it'll just continue to grow. And this is where we want to be. So we need to reduce half of our emissions by 2020 in order to meet the goals of the state. And then by 2050, we need to reduce it 80% below 1990. And that's really aggressive. And you're thinking, how do we get there? Well, it's really easy. There's a few things that we do at the city. And one of them is promoting buying local. And when we think of local, we think of, making things locally, using local services. And as Jim mentioned, we really want people to travel shorter distances. And that's one of the beautiful things about buying local. I can since I live in town, I could ride my bike to go eat lunch somewhere or to go to the reserve. So there's a lot of ways for us why that's environmentally friendly. And just to give you an example, like a bottle of wine from Australia, Franz is in the audience, so he's going to be picked on today. A bottle of wine from Australia can it produces about 1,000 pounds of carbon dioxide, versus a wine that's made locally, which emits little because it's not traveling a far distance, it's not having to fly across an ocean. And so that's one of the things we'd like to keep in perspective as well. And so when we think about shopping locally, I like to say, buy locally, think globally, because that's what we're doing. So we want to use local resources, we want to use local products, and we want to bike or walk to those places to where we get those. And that will all help reduce our carbon footprint. And as you'll notice on the carbon footprint, there's things that I couldn't measure. Like I can't measure, whether you buy your food from Mexico or whether you're buying it from a local farm in Morgan Hill or around this area. But those are things that you can consider maybe in your life and how you can reduce your impact and help us achieve our community goals. So buy locally, think globally.
When I came to Morgan Hill many, many years ago, it wasn't really a self-contained community. There were lots and lots of things you couldn't get here. You had to go out of town. There was one place in town you could buy men's underwear. There's no place in town you could buy towels and washcloths. And today, it's pretty much a self-contained community. Everything you need, everything you want to purchase, you can buy locally. You can get it here. And Rebecca didn't really mention the farmer's market, but that is really a great resource for our local groceries and that sort of thing. I was going to ask Jim to come up and tell us a little bit more about the big box store. You going to do that, Jim?
I will. Gosh, we've been bashing big box stores and large corporations and things like that, but I'm a small business owner, and I hope one day I'm a large corporation. I mean, that would be good, but I still want to participate in the community. And that's the wonderful thing about this concept of buying local. It's not all about bad versus good, it's about good versus better. Brad is the one that introduced me to this concept, and that's why in his flyer that he created, he used a target. And what he said was, think of the center of the target as your local independent business, because that's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. But when you're going out and you have to decide what you want to buy, if you can't find what you need at a local independent business, all right, stay local, but maybe go to a chain. Or stay local and go to a big box store. Because as long as you're local, in some way, you're giving back to the community. And so we can all encourage growth. But if you focus on the concept of this target, and when you're making your buying decisions, think about the center. And if you can't meet your needs there, only then do you need to move out.
Well, I have a question to you. Does all this mean that if I just change my shopping habits, not only am I going to change my community, but I've changed the world?
Yes, you can. Have you heard that one before? Yes, you can. Yes, you can.